Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't, I'm EDJ, and we are now continuing with Historia Civilis' Caesar series. Next now is Caesar as King. Last time we saw the Battle of Munda, the end of Labienus, and overall kind of the main end of the main players of the Pompeian faction. Though Sextus goes around, causes more mayhem for many more years. For the most part, the Pompeians are kind of like, for the most part crippled and if not outright done. So yeah, now we gotta deal with Caesar's, last year essentially, right? Before his death. So yeah, we'll see just the events leading up, the disgruntlement of the Senate, and just I'm guessing the formation of the conspiracy against him. And the question of the age is Caesar as king, which no doubt is going to be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to this video, and let's just get to it, shall we? Without any further ado, let us see Caesar as king.
Julius Caesar's old friend, Titus Labienus, had been defeated. The Roman Civil War was officially over, and Spain had been pacified. After a few weeks of house cleaning, Caesar headed back to the capital. On the road to Rome, he met up with Mark Antony, who at one time had served as Caesar's political point man. A couple of years earlier, Antony had conducted himself like an absolute maniac while Caesar was away on campaign, and in doing so, had found himself in Caesar's disfavor. Caesar and Antony reunited, and the two spent several days catching up on the road. When it was time for Antony to leave, the two had mended their fractured relationship. Caesar forgave Antony and promised to make room for him in the years to come.
Wow.
But there may have been more to this meeting than meets the eye. According to some ancient sources, just before Antony headed up the road, a cabal of senators approached him and asked for his help in removing Caesar from power. Antony politely turned them down, but the interesting thing is that when Antony made amends with Caesar, he told him nothing of this conspiracy. What on earth was Antony doing? Did he not take the conspiracy seriously? Was he somehow hedging his bets? We have no idea, but it's interesting. Marcus Brutus.
Yeah, that is beyond interesting. I'm almost wondering. I feel like Antony was smart enough to tie his lot with Caesar, obviously, through the Civil War, through the thick of it, essentially. He was a pro-Caesar guy. Though that is a little shady, I suppose. But I feel like Mark Antony, if nothing else, knew who to back, at least, before Caesar died, and then it kind of falls from there, but that makes you think, doesn't it?
Who was serving as the governor of Cisalpine Gaul, also took this opportunity to come and meet with Caesar as he passed through his province. Caesar was happy with Brutus's performance, and promised to fast-track his career in the years to come. Governor this year, praetor next year, consul 3 years after that. Brutus
promised to fast-track Caesar's life, one stab here, one stab there. No, I'm joking. Man, it's so awkward. It's so weird seeing Caesar and Brutus, be civil, because you know what's about to happen, right? Oh boy.
Had a bright future ahead of him. Caesar arrived back in Rome late in the summer of 45. Instead of heading home, he lingered outside the Pomerium and petitioned the Senate to grant him a fifth triumph.
Oh my
Naturally,
goodness.
They agreed. Caesar's fifth triumph was unlike any other triumph in Roman history. This triumph was all about the end of the Roman Civil War, which meant that it literally celebrated the defeat of a Roman army. This was an illegal and illegitimate triumph, no matter how you looked at it. But the Senate didn't care. Caesar's allies were in control, and if Caesar wanted a triumph, Caesar would get a triumph. The planning of a triumph was an art, and Caesar would spend a month or so meticulously going over every little detail. He said
Didn't the Romans get uppity during his fourth triumph? You know, the one where he shows Cato and like other Romans dead. Well, maybe maybe he learned from that mistake. This one says he's gonna frame it as the end of the Civil War. Just hopefully he doesn't show any gratuitous images of the death of other Romans, and I think he should be fine.
Settled on silver as the theme, since Spain was famous at the time for its silver mines. The big day arrived, and the whole thing was unbelievably extravagant. But as you might have already guessed, it was also in bad taste. Most of Caesar's propaganda artwork depicted Romans killing Romans. Many in the crowd would have lost friends or family to the Civil War, and now here Caesar was rubbing their noses in it. What was meant to be a big public celebration turned out to be one big downer. As Caesar was approaching the climax of the triumph, he rode past that year's government officials and magistrates. One of the tribunes of the plebs, a former Pompeian, made his feelings known to everybody by refusing to stand for the triumphator as he passed. Caesar noticed. According to one source, he called from his chariot, "Come on, Tribune Aquila, take back the Republic if you can." Caesar tried to play this off as a joke, but it kinda wasn't. It really got under his skin.
Wow. Yeah, that oh boy. I guess Caesar didn't learn. It doesn't seem that they're angry so much as they're kind of depressed. So at least that's a less aggressive response. But yeah, it's coming off. It's just in bad taste, Caesar. You know Romans don't like watching Romans die. If you had portrayed anyone else, they'd be cheering like madmen. You know, man. The only way to reprimand this is to quickly fight a foreign power, Caesar. No, I'm joking. But, he would actually get a fight part there, right? Before he died. But, yeah, overall, yeesh. Yeah, you're kind of seeing Caesar's... I mean, Caesar is an overconfident man, and rightfully so. But you're kind of seeing it now without any, like, restraint. You know, I think while overconfident, you could downright say arrogant. I feel like Caesar has done a pretty good job of portraying himself in a more humble, better light throughout most of his career, but at this point, I think it's starting to drop. I mean, he's still beyond popular. I'm just saying, you're like those little instances, you're seeing him be much more bold and brazen, right?
In the days following the triumph, in what should have been one of the high points of his career, he bitterly complained about this one tiny incident nonstop. He would issue some mundane order, like, deliver this letter to so-and-so, and then would be like, wait, better check to see if it's okay with Tribune Aquila first.
Okay.
Hi,
Let me get
we're
this
Visible,
fast.
the wireless company that makes things visible. With us, what you see...
Caesar, you have been declared enemy of the Republic. You have had friends like Labienus betray you and Pompey betray you. You have been hated and attacked and downright almost like... You've been through it all. But that was enough to push you over the edge. None of that seemed to faze him, but this one thing, one dude not getting up, it's like, I can't handle this. How could he not stand for me? One person, like, you know. Oh boy, Caesar, you're... Was that enough to bug you? Is that what the Senate had to do the whole time? Just show a little bit of disrespect? To really ruffle your feathers? Oh boy. Yeah, Caesar's just petty. He's like, one person doesn't like him, and that was enough to, like, just throw him over the edge, despite the thousands who adore him at this point, right? Oh boy, yeah. Yikes, Caesar.
Speaking of taking the Republic back, We need to talk.
What's the guy's name? Wait.
It's okay with Tribune Aquila first of
Aquila.
experiencing over this period. Just a quick reminder, Caesar had already been named dictator for a period of 10 years, and had been granted permission to run for consul for 5 years, which gave him unparalleled control over Roman politics. So that's our starting line. Things were about to get really weird. The sequencing of some of this stuff is kinda hard to nail down, but let's just say that over the span of 8 months, the following occurred. The Senate heaped all kinds of titles and honors upon Caesar. They named him Liberator. They named him Father of the Fatherland. They named him Imperator for life. All sorts of titles, all in the same vein. They allowed him to wear his special clothing from his triumph on all future festival days. This would have been a flamboyant purple toga and a crown of laurel leaves. Very conspicuous. This clothing was deliberately designed to evoke the idea of monarchy. Sure, it was purely symbolic, but Caesar liked it, and some found it disturbing how quickly he took to walking around in royal garb, like it was nothing. But that was only the beginning. In the heart of Rome, on the Capitoline Hill, there was a grouping of statues depicting each of the 7 kings of Rome, along with an 8th statue of the man who drove them out and established the Republic. That guy's name happened to be Brutus. I mentioned that for no reason whatsoever. Let's just move on.
Oh. Symbolic. Poetic, huh? With
the Senate's permission, Caesar added a 9th statue to this lineup of himself. Yikes.
Oh my goodness. Caesar had to know what he's doing. He's not an idiot. Like, this isn't just a happy mistake. Caesar does not strike me as someone who would just make something like this and not care. Like, he knew what he was doing. And I do believe, to a degree, that Caesar did reject the title of king, but he by no means rejected the power of a king. Like, in my opinion, you know, obviously I don't know what his longer term plans were. He unfortunately died, but I do believe Caesar loved power, and to a degree he would hold it. For what reasons, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, obviously he's doing good at governing, so he has the best interests of the people, I do believe, or at least he would benefit the people. But at the same time, it's hard to say if there's a little bit of just power hungriness in him. But yeah, Caesar... yeah, it's really interesting.
Caesar was also named the Prefect of Morality, which was a made-up thing, and was given the power to kick people out of the Senate if they exhibited bad public morals, which naturally could be interpreted to mean literally anything. He didn't really need this power, since he had already packed the Senate with his political allies, but now if anybody ever got out of line, they could be gone in a flash. As you can see, all of these changes were moving in the same direction, but Caesar wanted to make it even more blatant, so he got for himself a special golden chair that from now on would sit between the 2 consuls during Senate meetings. Now, I don't know about you, but where I'm from, we might call this a throne, but the Romans would...
Yeah, you know, Caesar, you're kind of not being subtle anymore. That's what I was saying. Like, before Caesar was... you could kind of interpret some of his actions as, like, you know, maybe, you know, he portrayed himself differently. Here, now that at the apex of his power, I feel like he's kind of dropping the facade to some degree. Like, the mask is slipping, and you're kind of seeing, like, again, I don't know. I know some people hate Caesar and call him a tyrant. Some would claim he's a hero. I don't have a personal stance either way. Like I said, I don't have a concrete opinion or feeling of Caesar, I feel, in regards to that. Like, I don't hate the guy, I don't love the guy, I don't view him as a hero nor a tyrant, but I don't know, I guess maybe my opinions are betraying me, because I have formed some thoughts, and I do believe Caesar did want power, you know, and that his ambition would have brought him even higher if he had lived longer. you know, and I think it's ambition is the word I'd use for Caesar. Much like Napoleon, who brought himself to the peak of French power, I have no doubt that Caesar basically wanted to reach the apex of Roman power, and he was kind of already there, but it's frightening to think that if he had lived longer, he would have even achieved higher places, right? So, yeah, but this is a bit too extravagant. He's being way too extravagant with his dress. Now basically a throne. Like, it's almost no subtlety. You can almost, like, see where you can see why everyone's getting afraid now. They're like, oh, he's not even, like, pretending. I mean, at least Augustus, right? I think, like, Augustus portrayed himself much more humbly, even though he was the emperor of Rome, essentially. Caesar seems to be just like, oh well, you know, I'm powerful now.
Thrones were for kings. This was just a special golden chair reserved for the guy who dressed up like a king and acted like a king.
Yeah, and the guy with absolute power to do whatever he wants, kind of like a king, but he's not a king, it's just a chair guy. Caesar's supporters try to spin this around, his propaganda machine working overtime, trying to turn everything to make it look like Caesar. Caesar could literally walk up and say, I'm king of Rome now, and they'd be like, well, you see, he meant that symbolically, you see, because, what really is a king, guys? Like, just debating and spinning around in circles to justify everything, right?
Totally different.
No, it's not.
This is by no means an exhaustive list, and there's even more to come, but you get the idea. Caesar spent these months cobbling together a collection of powers that essentially transformed him into a monarch in all but name. I'm reminded of how Hemingway said that people go bankrupt gradually and then suddenly. The Roman political system had been in a state of degradation for years, decades, generations even, but then the whole thing collapsed in on itself in a matter of months. Sure, this had been precipitated by the Roman Civil War, but it's not like Caesar walked in there and overthrew the government. He didn't have to. What happened instead is that he pushed up against Rome's political institutions, found nothing pushing back, and then took whatever he wanted. What did this unchecked power reveal about Caesar? It revealed that what Caesar wanted, maybe what he had always wanted, was to destroy Roman politics. He wanted a crown. He wanted monarchy. Healthy political systems are extremely stable. Warts and all, the Roman Republic was a mostly healthy political system. Caesar destroyed it, and he did so deliberately. This decision would result in untold human misery and death in the years to come.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, we all know that Historia Civilis is not like Julius Caesar, and I'm sure there are plenty, if whoever watches this video, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but, I'm sure there are plenty who definitely are of the same opinion of Julius Caesar. I don't know if any of you who watch these videos of mine are on the same boat, or any of you actually like Julius Caesar, and obviously, this is where it comes into the bias, right, of Historia Civilis. He's like, oh, Caesar definitely wanted to be king, and obviously there is a lot of strong arguments to support this, but, again, it makes me, obviously, I have to be a bit weary of what I'm listening to, because obviously this is a anti-Julius Caesar bias, and I like Kings and Generals telling, because, yeah, he gives examples of Julius Caesar, actions that you definitely see are power-hungry, but he also does temper them with other, instances where Caesar, you could argue that he's not. Again, this is something that has been debated for centuries, right? Julius Caesar and what he wanted. And I think the biggest tragedy of his death is that we don't have a definitive answer. Because I feel like if he hadn't died and lived much longer, I feel like we would know exactly for 100% certainty what he wanted to do, if he wanted to be a king or not. Man, I really wish he hadn't died. I just kind of wanted... I just wish I knew. You know, I wish I could look into an alternate reality so I can finally see what Caesar was planning. But here, yeah, overall, you know... I think the Roman Republic was already kind of faltering, and it was kind of already, like, I guess you can say eroding. I mean, you know, and that the Civil War, everything that happened at the end only pushed it, but I feel like it was already going down the path of being completely destroyed. I could be wrong. I mean, obviously the Republic lasted for 400 years, but from watching these two series, I'm just seeing so much faults, so much loopholes, so much cracks into the government, so much leeways and corruption that it's just hard to say that, I don't know. It's just, I feel like even if Julius Caesar hadn't done what he did, I just don't know if how long it could have lasted, if it could even be saved, quite frankly. I don't know. Then again, I'm a bigger fan of the Roman Empire. I feel like the Empire's cooler and funner to learn about than the Republic. I'm not sure if that opinion's gonna go well with certain people, but I'd find the Empire cooler. But, you know, so maybe I do have a little bit of, like, a bit more of a preference towards the Empire. But obviously there's a lot of factors that even I'm not taking into account. So I don't know. Again, like, you know, there's just so much to this, I feel, to dissect, that I would really have to just learn more about, you know?
The horrifying fact is that even if Caesar could have known this, I'm not sure that he would have cared. That's egomaniacal, and in a way it can't help but eclipse everything else he ever did. Some in Rome's political class were able to see what was happening, but they were wholly ineffective at stopping it. Cicero wrote a helpful little guidebook outlining how he thought the Republic ought to be restored, but Caesar's subordinates wouldn't even read it. In September of 45, Caesar stepped down as Rome's only consul, and had 2 loyalists elected to serve out the rest of the year. It's interesting to note that Caesar had apparently decided that the office of consul was no longer needed to dominate Roman politics. That could be done from his special golden chair that was definitely not a throne. On December 31st, in what would have been his last day in office, one of these new consuls unexpectedly dropped dead. Caesar stopped everything and called for an emergency election so that a new consul could serve out the rest of the term. Some other loyalist named Caninius won, and he would be in office for a grand total of something like 4 hours. Cicero was livid. All Caninius wanted was the prestige of having been elected consul, and Caesar was happy to just give it to him. Never before had the consulship been used in this way. Cicero was right to be angry. Caesar was showing everybody that it didn't really matter who the consuls were anymore. The whole thing was outrageous.
It's outrageous. It's unfair. But yeah, you're seeing that why so many people turned on Caesar, right? If anything else, this is highlighting the fears of the anti-Caesarians and what led to Caesar being straight up shanked to death, you know? So yeah.
Around this time, Caesar really buckled down and started preparing for his next military campaign. The Parthian Empire had sided with Pompey during the Roman Civil War. They were not a significant factor in any way, but still. Tensions were high, and many prominent Caesarians wanted revenge. On top of this, Rome's last major clash with the Parthians had ended in a humiliating defeat, and there was a vague sense among Rome's general population that somebody needed to wipe the slate clean. So that was one issue. War with Parthia was on the horizon. A totally separate and unrelated issue was that the Dacians were openly crossing the Danube and raiding the province of Illyricum. In fact, this had been happening since Caesar's time as Illyricum's governor. Instead of dealing with this problem back then, Caesar had sent Illyricum's legions to fight in the Gallic Wars. Since that time, the whole situation had spun out of control. Caesar's plan was to cross the Danube and spend a year campaigning in Dacia, after which he would march directly to Parthia and spend 2 years campaigning there. The plans for after the Parthian campaign are a little more vague, but from what we can piece together, the idea was to swing north of the Black Sea and then march all the way back to Rome. All told, this would be a massive expedition. Caesar began the long process of recruiting and transporting as many as 80,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry up to Illyricum. In December of 45, he sent his great-nephew Octavian to oversee the training of the legions. Once everything was ready, the plan was for Caesar, Lepidus, and Antony to depart with the legions, and for Octavian to return to Rome and take Lepidus's place as Caesar's official number 2. At some point during this process, people started to speak of an ancient prophecy that said that only a king could defeat the Parthians. Cicero makes it very clear that no such prophecy existed, and that this was just a wild rumor that sprang up.
Who makes up these prophecies? Who's walking around, there is a prophecy that a Scipio cannot be defeated, and then like people like Cicero who are rational are just like, who said this? And why does everyone buy it? Who the one is saying these? You just walk around, there is a prophecy that only a king whose last name starts with a C and who has defeated people like Pompey can defeat the Parthian. Like, what the heck? You know? Oh my goodness. There is a prophecy that only the guy who conquered, the Gauls is a king, and he only can defeat the Parthians. Oh my goodness. I'm just thinking, like, who just walks up and everyone just buys it? Like, alright, I guess we'll just help spread this rumor. Then again, you see it all the time, right? Like, on, like, Twitter and crap, like, people will just say something and everyone will jump on it. So, you know what? Maybe now I think about it, Yeah, nowadays you kind of see it. Except people aren't using the term prophecy anymore. They're just saying stuff and everyone's buying. Oh, man. We haven't changed, have we? Us humans are wild. Us humans are... In some ways we evolve and advance, and in other ways we kind of remain the same, don't we? Oh, man.
Out of nowhere. Who started this rumor? We can't say for sure, but I have my suspicions.
Oh, yes, Caesar. Testing the waters to see if people are gonna be cool with the idea of kingship. Okay, I see you, Caesar. There's an idea that when Mark Antony offered Caesar the crown, that was staged because Caesar wanted to see what people thought of the idea of him just coming out blatantly as, wanting to be king. Again, there's an idea of that, and you could definitely almost buy it. I don't know if it's true or not. That's just a speculation, if you would. But yeah, that would be funny. Like Caesar just sitting there with Mark Antony and Lepidus. He's like, hey, let's just send people out. Let's just say a prophecy maybe wants me to be king, and then let's see how the people react to it. And once I do it, maybe there'll be some legitimacy behind it. Oh man, just the thought of Caesar just sitting alone at night with his homies, just trying to come up with that. Hey, Mark Antony, offer me the crown, but I'm gonna reject it. But in case they cheer, I might just accept it. I don't know. Like, they're just staging these things. It's just the funniest thing to me. I don't know.
In the year 44 B.C.E., the Senate decided to bestow another title upon Caesar. This one's a biggie. They extended Caesar's 10-year dictatorship indefinitely, naming him Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. This was a turning point. Up until now, Caesar's critics could always comfort themselves with the fact that Caesar's powers would expire after 10 years. This was no longer the case. Caesar's critics had some real soul-searching to do. Immediately after naming Caesar dictator for life, the ancient sources say that the Senate took a loyalty oath to Caesar. The exact wording was, "I pledge to preserve Caesar's life," or "May Caesar outlive me." But in the last few decades, scholars have been rethinking this. We now know that "or may so-and-so outlive me" was a popular turn of phrase during this period. By the time the ancient sources were writing, the phrase had fallen into disuse, and so when they say that the Senate took a loyalty oath, they may be mistaken. Just be aware that this is still being hotly debated behind the scenes.
It may be small, but it can bear over 4.
As I've mentioned, many in the Roman political class were alarmed at Caesar's growing authoritarianism. But at this time, 3 incidents occurred in rapid succession that turned that alarm into a full-blown panic. Here's the first incident. One day, after voting to invest Caesar with even more titles and powers, a bunch of senators decided to go and present the legislation to Caesar in person. One of the consuls at the time led the procession, senators followed behind, lictors escorted them, it was a whole thing. Caesar was off overseeing a construction project and was in the weeds talking with one of his colleagues. As the senatorial procession approached, Caesar didn't acknowledge them. He kept on talking. After a long moment, somebody got Caesar's attention and was like, "It appears that the Roman Senate would like a word with you." In response, Caesar lazily looked over, looked back, and returned to his conversation.
Wow.
Not only was this behavior extremely rude, but the Romans placed a lot of cultural importance on standing for certain occasions. Being approached by a Roman consul was absolutely one of those times when a person was expected to stand.
Yeah, here Caesar is throwing tantrums when Tribune Aquilia or Aquilus doesn't stand for his triumph, right? He's throwing a hissy fit over that. The freaking Senate, the governmental body of Rome shows up and he ignores them. Yeah, Caesar has his moments of hypocrisy, that's for sure. But, you know, he can't tolerate when rudeness is to him, but he'll definitely be rude if he needs to. It's cool because he's Caesar, but man, that's insane. Just like ignoring. He's just that powerful at this point, right? That's shocking. Gasp.
And this wasn't just a Roman consul. This was a Roman consul with a senatorial delegation at his back. By making such a big show of not rising to his feet, Caesar was broadcasting to the world that in his opinion, he outranked a Roman consul. Caesar's critics were justifiably outraged at this behavior. Here's the second incident. As the sun rose on a winter morning, one of the statues of Caesar appeared with a diadem on its head. A diadem was a special kind of headband worn by monarchs, particularly Eastern monarchs. Clearly, this was some kind of subversive act, so 2 tribunes of the plebs ordered it taken down. A few days later, Caesar appeared before a crowd for some kind of public event, and was greeted with cries of "King! King! King!" Caesar turned to the crowd and replied, "Not king, but Caesar." This was a pun that doesn't work in English. King, or Rex, was a common last name in Caesar's time, so on one level the joke was like, "You've got the wrong guy, I'm not Rex, I'm Caesar." But the pun also worked on a second level, as if to say, I can see how you would be confused, because the word Caesar and the word king are synonymous. The crowd.
And it does, because like, you know, like, even through the centuries, right, like the term Tsar or Kaiser derive from Caesar, so he's almost like telling it the truth there, that just the name Caesar is enough to be a title for king. It's synonymous with kingship, like, and it does become that for thousands of years after. Like, that's insane that this man could be that influential, just, oh dear.
Crowd immediately got the joke, and according to the ancient sources, they didn't like it. They went dead quiet. Some
Caesar, you're not a comedian. Please, don't try to be funny. I can relate to you. I try to be funny on this channel, and I know I'm not, but I'm still making myself laugh, so that's all that matters. But, I get it, Caesar. Tough crowd, huh?
believe that the people calling out king may have been Caesarian plants, and judging by the crowd's reaction, that sounds right to me. The same two tribunes of the plebs ordered those who had started the chant arrested. Caesar intervened and was like, "It's fine, no need to stir up trouble." The tribunes did not like this, and later issued a written statement saying that Caesar was trying to interfere with their lawful duties. At the next Senate meeting, Caesar denounced the two tribunes and went one step further and accused them of planting that diadem from days earlier just to make him look bad. Caesar had packed the Senate with his political allies, so of course they went along for the ride. One senator went so far as to demand the death penalty for the two tribunes, for making Caesar look bad, I guess. Instead, Caesar decided to appear merciful, and the two tribunes were stripped of office and banished from the city of Rome. This was a shocking show of force, and the worst part is that nobody even tried to stop it. Caesar's critics were beginning to see the writing on the wall. The Roman Republic was on the verge of plunging off a cliff, and the vast majority of the political class did not care. Something needed to be done. Here's the third incident. A little less than a month later, on February 15th of the year 44, everybody came out to celebrate Lupercalia. Lupercalia was a fertility festival where a bunch of male priests would strip down to loincloths or nothing at all and run around the Palatine Hill, tracing the path of the original Pomerium. These priests carried fake whips, and any woman touched by a whip was said to become extremely fertile for the coming year. Women would spill into the street and try to block the runners. The runners would use their fake whips to clear a path. The whole thing was stupid fun. Caesar had made good on his commitment to Antony, and the two men were now serving side by side as Rome's two consuls for that year. Antony made the strange choice of volunteering to lead the Lupercalian runners. It's not every day that you get to see a head of state running naked through the streets. To each their own, I guess. Caesar wisely chose to keep his clothes on and watched the day's celebrations from a raised platform alongside other high-ranking officials. Since this was a festival day, he wore his flamboyant purple toga and his laurel leaves. When Antony was finished running, he approached the raised platform and presented Caesar with, most English translations say a crown, but it was actually another diadem. The crowd went silent. Was this it? Was Caesar going to crown himself right here? Was this the moment when Rome becomes a monarchy once more? After milking it for a moment, Caesar pushed the diadem away, much to the relief of the crowd. Antony then ascended the platform and presented it to Caesar for a second time, according to one source actually putting it in Caesar's lap. The crowd fell into another stunned silence. All Caesar had to do was put it on his head, and the world would be forever changed. Caesar rejected it for a second time. The crowd burst into wild applause. He told the crowd that there was only one true king of the Romans, and that person was Jupiter Optimus Maximus. He ordered the diadem taken to Jupiter's main temple and put on display. So what should we take away from this incident?
Wow.
It's highly dramatic, and it seems to have played out a little too perfectly.
Yeah, like I said, there is... I've heard it said, I think even Kings in General said that it could have possibly been staged because they wanted to get the reaction of the crowd, to see if it'd be cool. And if they had been receptive, maybe Caesar might have just put it on his head. But yeah, it comes across way too dramatic, right? It's like, you could basically just feel the drama. It feels so staged, like they have the crowd eating at the palm of their hand. Here, Caesar, give it. He's like, oh, I can't. And then, like, the crowd is just like, yeah! But then he offers it again, just everyone's watching. They're like, is he gonna do it? Is Caesar gonna do it? Is he gonna be king? And it's like, no. And everyone cheers out again. You kidding me? You couldn't plan something that perfect in real life on the spot. Like, man. Man, I'm telling you, if this was all staged, like these prophecies and stuff, Caesar has kind of a flair for the dramatics, doesn't he? It just makes me laugh. Just him and Mark Antony chilling, like late at night, just being like, yo bro, once you're done running naked all over the place, walk up to me, hand me the crown, and I'll graciously reject it. Or maybe accept it, depending if the crown wants it. Like, you know? I'm sorry, this is funny.
In my opinion, it's pretty clear that Antony and Caesar coordinated the whole thing ahead of time. Cicero reached the same conclusion. He later asked Antony, "Would you have us believe that you found a diadem on the street, or did you instead bring it from home?" Some say that this Lupercalia incident was Caesar
Be careful, Cicero. If you antagonize Mark Antony too much, he might nail your hands to the Senate door. Maybe your head too. So just be careful there, Cicero.
testing the waters. If the crowd had been into it, he would have accepted the diadem. Others say that this was a performative rejection of the crown, staged so that he could continue to wield his other king-like powers as he wished. I'm kinda in the first camp. Caesar was vain. He liked being flagrant and wearing his triumphator outfit during festivals. He liked his special little golden chair that was definitely not a throne. He liked all of the pomp and circumstance. My feeling is that in his heart, he wanted a crown.
Shop Ralph's for over 30,000 mouthwater.
Around this time, perhaps literally on the same day, a priest named Sparina, who specialized in divination, approached Caesar and told him that his life would be in danger until the Ides of March, or March 15th. Divination is not a thing, so where did Sparina get this idea? Remember last year, when a cabal of senators tried and failed to recruit Antony to their cause? That particular group fell apart, but it was not the first or last conspiracy of its kind. Since that time, Caesar's authoritarian behavior had become extremely alarming, and senators were talking about it behind the scenes. Sparina was enmeshed with this group. He may have been a senator himself, and if not, he certainly fraternized with them. The most likely scenario is that Sparina overheard something, but when he told Caesar about it, he wanted to keep it nice and vague so that he didn't implicate any of his friends. But where did that specific date come from? The Ides of March. It was widely known that Caesar was planning to leave on campaign shortly after the Ides. By giving that date, what Sparina was really saying was that Caesar's life would be in danger so long as he remained in the city of Rome. Sparina was exactly right. There was a conspiracy, and Caesar's life was in danger. The conspirators had not yet decided when or how to strike, but they were in perfect agreement that Caesar could not be allowed to leave the city alive.
Yeah, it got really ominous there, because next video is the death of Caesar, and man, I still can't get over the Tribune Aquila. That was hilarious. I've never seen Caesar that upset over anything. Like, you think, like, all the people trying to kill him would have upset him, right? Or anything. But that one just pushed him over the edge. I'm sad Tribune Aquila didn't appear anymore. I kind of wanted to see him continue to troll Caesar, and just Caesar hates him. You know, like Homer Simpson hates Ned Flanders, like Flanders, or Dinkelberg. just Caesar hating this one dude just because he didn't stand. Oh, that'd be the funniest thing. I'm sorry, I'm detouring, but man, that priest, you know, must have felt like, you know, when Caesar died, probably in the Ides of March, he must have been like, oh my gosh, really? I was just saying that, like, I didn't know that. Like, man, maybe I actually do have deviation powers, you know? Maybe I actually can tell the future. Like, he must have felt like, wow, you know? I can only imagine, but, yeah, guys, so I'm I'm going to, first I'm gonna ask Tribune Aquila if it's okay I can make another video in this series. If it's okay, I can watch the assassination of Julius Caesar. Hopefully he says yes, and I'll be seeing you all on Friday if I get his approval. Bye, everyone.